Hello, friends. On July 20, 1969, the lunar module of the Apollo 11 mission landed on the moon. Astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were on board. After the landing, Neil Armstrong tried to open the door to step onto the moon. It wasn't easy due to high pressure, but he managed to open it after a little struggle. Then, he attempted to exit in his heavy spacesuit. The exit was not very spacious, and he accidentally hit the top, breaking off a piece of the lunar module. Unaware of this, because there was no sound, they continued their mission. This broken piece was the ascent engine arming switch, a crucial component for their return to Earth. What happens to Neil Armstrong and his team? Were they returned to Earth safely? Today, let's dive into the story and explore the truth behind this mission. The real reason for the Apollo 11 mission was the Cold War, specifically the space race between America and the Soviet Union, sparked by Sputnik, the first artificial satellite launch in 1957, and Yuri Gagarin's 1961 space journey. In response, President John F. Kennedy promised in a speech on May 25, 1961, to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth before the end of the decade. Friends, imagine 1961. There were no smartphones, no internet, there wasn't even GPS technology. The computers were so slow and old. In such times, he was promising to send humans to the moon. For this, over the next 5 years, he provided $7 to $9 billion in additional funding to the space program. Mere months later, the tests began. First, they tested the rockets that would be used to leave the Earth. Then the heat shields of the command modules were tested to see how much they'd be able to resist heat. Then the propulsion system of the service module. Between 1963 to 1967, many unmanned tests were carried out. In February 1967, during a pre-launch test, Apollo 1's cabin fire tragically killed 3 astronauts. NASA didn't lose courage. Instead, it continued further testing. Apollo 4, Apollo 5, and Apollo 6 were unmanned testing missions. In October 1968, Apollo 7 mission was launched, and once again they attempted to send humans to space. This was successful. Only 2 months later, in December 1968, Apollo 8 mission was launched, in which 3 astronauts were sent near the moon. 3 months later, in March 1969, Apollo 9 mission was launched. In this, the lunar module was tested, the part of the spacecraft that was actually going to land on the moon. And 2 months after that, in May 1969, was the Apollo 10 mission. In this mission, 3 astronauts had to do almost everything for practice that was supposed to be done in Apollo 11 mission, except actually landing on the moon. Look at the speed with which NASA was launching the missions one after the other. In the gap of 2 to 3 months, a new mission to test the next thing. Testing the rockets, spacecraft, going to the moon. And after all these tests, finally, on the 16th of July 1969, Apollo 11 mission was launched. 38-year-old Commander Neil Armstrong led this mission, with Michael Collins as the pilot of the command module and Edwin Buzz Aldrin as the pilot of the lunar module. The spacecraft consisted of 3 main parts: the command module, service module, and lunar module. The first 2 are collectively known as CSM. On July 19, 1969, after traveling nearly 400,000 kilometers, the Apollo 11 spacecraft reached the moon's orbit. The command and service module separated from the lunar module. Michael Collins was in the command module, nicknamed Columbia, while the lunar module, nicknamed the Eagle, carried Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. The command and service module remained in the moon's orbit. Around 8 p.m., as the lunar module approached landing, alarms 1201 and 1202 went off due to an overloaded guidance computer, but mission control advised continuing. Armstrong took manual control at 150 meters to avoid boulders, changing the landing spot. With just 5% fuel left, mission control initiated a critical countdown. And that's why the 60-second call is given, and then the 30-second call. Finally, in the 30-second, Neil Armstrong sent a radio message to Earth. The Eagle had successfully landed. Armstrong then donned his spacesuit, opened the door, and stepped onto the moon, a moment watched by 650 million people worldwide. Buzz Aldrin followed him, and for the next 2.5 hours they collected samples, took photographs, and set up scientific instruments. They set up a television camera to transmit signals to Earth, measured solar winds, installed a device to send laser beams to compute the exact distance between Earth and Moon, and deployed a passive seismometer to measure moonquakes. They collected 23 kilograms of rock and dust, planted an American flag, and left a plate with the inscription, "Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon." After spending 21 hours on moon as planned, they need to take off again and attach to the CSM. But soon they realized what had happened as told earlier in video. The engine switch is broken. As Aldrin used his ballpoint pen to complete the circuit of switch and to reignite the engine. Finally, the lunar module was reattached to the CSM. The plan for landing on Earth involved separating the command module and the service module, which was destroyed in Earth's atmosphere. NASA installed thrusters to prevent debris from hitting the command module. However, during the return to Earth, the thrusters on the service module failed. The astronauts could only watch as the service module broke apart around them. Miraculously, the debris did not hit the command module, which remained safe. The risk was so high that President Nixon had prepared a speech in case the astronauts were killed. The command module safely descended the Earth's atmosphere. The parachutes were deployed, and it landed in the Pacific Ocean, from where they were evacuated by rescue ship and quarantined for 2 weeks with rats. Because of the risk of carrying pathogens that they might have encountered on Moon, that could possibly wreak havoc on Earth. What happened after Apollo 11 mission? Even NASA has plans for missions up to Apollo 20. Did they continue or stop? Why some people claim that entire Apollo mission was an imposter? To get these answers, stay connected.